Honey, look at those beautiful clouds.
Those aren't clouds, Daddy. Those are chemtrails.
Chemtrails? What are chemtrails?
Chemical trails, Daddy, and they're very bad.
Hi, this is Dane Wigington with GeoEngineeringWatch.org radio for catching back up after a week of not being at the helm here. I had a trip to LA for a speaking event, which I'll go over in a minute. But this, even though I've been gone for a week, and even before that, we every week went over the parade of engineered snowstorms again and again and again, week after week after week. The same is still true this week with yet another round of winter storm packs. It's just winding down, and there's a new theatrically named storm taking its place. But after this round, I think the conveyor of engineered snowstorms is breaking down, and I think we will have what it looks like is shaping up anyway is about 95% of the country far above normal temperatures. So perhaps this will start to shed a little light on the completely engineered nature of these storms, which unfortunately is still being ignored, even by many of these so-called independent news sites that are supposed to be giving us the real news, the real data. This is extremely perplexing for me. We'll have commentary on this later. By the way, we have Richard Sachs with us again. My most sincere thanks to Richard for a great show last week with Rima LeBeau, whom I hold in extremely high regard, as I do Richard. Rima's husband, General Bert Stubblebine, a man of incredible honor and integrity. So I'm very grateful that she joined the show. We have Russ Tanner today, as always, and Russ's contributions to the cause are too long to list, and also a great assistance to me in trying to organize data and keep our site going and so forth too. So my gratitude to Russ. But again, back to the engineered snowstorms. That conveyor that's been held in place so long is breaking down, and they did allow some precipitation to flow into California. Interesting, shortly after the declaration of emergency in California. But of the precipitation that fell, now this is how the media completely distorts all reality. Northern California, Redding got 4 inches of rain, 4 inches, even though in my particular location, we're over 200 inches short for the last 7 years. And somehow the paper puts a big headline on it that says, dent in the drought, record rainfall. 4 inches of rain over 4 days is anything but record rainfall. So it's at the point now where it's a blatant, total lie by media. And academia also lying to a degree that can barely be comprehended. And this is what's got people so confused. They don't know. If they look out their window and it's snowy and cold. They assume the whole world is that way. The media tries to convince them the whole world is that way. It's just simply a lie. It's a patent lie. So I think in the next week, people might start to wake up and realize when their location in this chain of engineered snow events, which, by the way, they've done this in a manner that it's really the only manner they could do it, which made California and the West, at minimum, a climate sacrifice zone, more likely a target, as we've discussed. I mean, I think it serves both purposes for them. They can target California, and they can better engineer these cooler events in the east. But they've hit the most populated areas of the country, so they've impacted the most possible people, which creates the largest possible perception of a certain scenario of reality, which is false. These storms are being completely engineered from bottom to top. And again, in the next week, when the whole East Coast is probably going to approach record warm temperatures, people should truly wake up, I hope, from the fact that their reality is being completely engineered around them, toxically engineered around them, completely toxic. And as Richard Sachs states very accurately often, we discuss off the air, that no matter what was happening with the climate, geoengineering is horribly, horribly wrong and literally killing all life on Earth, no matter what. But the double-edged part of that sword, too, is that not only is it toxic and poisoning everything, it's literally tearing the climate system apart. And that's the aspect I want to make clear, so that as independent news sites continue even today to put out completely false data that have no facts, no statistics, no solid, verifiable information as the true state of the reality on the ground, only headlines and hyped statements, those are not facts. Everybody needs to realize this. A headline or a rant is not a fact. It's not a verifiable statistical statement. You know, it's probably evident I'm a little fired up about this, but I am, because it just goes on and on with those that many people think are telling them the accuracy or the truth, and whether it's just ideology on their end or what it is, I don't know. And everybody, I'm sure, knows who I'm talking about, the major independent news organizations that are putting out story after story, day after day, that the planet's going into cooling. That's exactly what the power structure wants them to say. So I don't know why they're saying it. I'm perplexed about that. But the bottom line is, look for facts. Look for statistics. Don't look for a headline. A headline is not a fact. So on that note, we'll continue to try to post solid data. In the next week, I hope people, again, as the temperatures hit record warm in many places of the country, I hope people begin to realize the totally and toxically engineered nature of the snow events that are occurring around them by the day. LAX Expo event that I was gone to for a week, a lot of very concerned people there, many that I hope get more concerned, though, and I was a little disappointed that a lot of people at even that expo in LA, which is a consciousness expo, were less focused on the bigger picture of what's destroying the planet and more focused on some inner bubble that some of them are in. Now, I don't want to blanket all of them that way, because certainly there was a lot of great people there, the organizers that let the film, or let us do a panel discussion there with George Barnes, Dr. Doug Levine, great guy. I just got to meet him Monday. I mean, he's an exceptional individual. George Barnes' film, Look Up, won another award. That award was presented the following day at the LAX Hilton, and so I don't know what George is up to now, 8 or 9 awards, but he's done a lot for the cause. And so a lot of people are coming together. There's still people in every arena that are in their bubbles, though, and we need them to get out of their bubbles. People in this Consciousness Expo that were really, a lot of them, unfortunately, still not realizing the gravity of what's happening outside and focused on whatever comfort zone that they've immersed themselves in. So I hope they break out of those bubbles. There is awareness raising on different levels. I had a meeting at the Capitol on Monday that was a very high-level meeting that I hope sincerely there's concern generated there now with these programs, and saturated every representative's office, every senator's office with data, every single one. I went to every single office with my kids helping me carry DVDs and flyers. So, you know, these flaming arrows that we've talked about in the show again and again and again, we all need to do this. Arm ourselves with data, credible data, compelling data, not long, drawn-out articles that go into rabbit hole, but pictures like on the flyers, that, you know, something like what we post in the cover of GeoEngineering Watch, and DVDs like Look Up. Get them to the right people. plant those seeds, start those fires, so that people start to connect the dots. So that being said, Richard, I know. Thank you for the show last week. Thank you for having Rima on. And Rima, certainly, she's extremely concerned about the geoengineering issue as well. Obviously, I didn't get to listen to the whole show yet, but she's in South America. I mean, did she indicate how many people down that way are concerned about this issue?
Well, they're certainly trying to raise concern in Chile and all over the world because geoengineering and chemtrails are now almost everywhere, and they're at the stage in Chile now where she is that they're definitely off the coast. They're moving in. They're poisoning the whole system for Chile as well. I personally asked her if she knows of government officials that are in on the deals to let them in, to let these bombers that I consider air raid squadrons violate their sovereign airspace. And unfortunately, she doesn't know to that depth what's going on in the Chilean government. But it's clear that this program is almost completely worldwide at this point.
It is. Many people ask that. Where can I go to hide from this? You can't go anywhere. There's no hiding from this, period. These materials drift everywhere. In fact, I had an email from somebody on my Facebook, or a message, that she felt there was no spraying occurring above her location. And I don't know why certain people think that, perhaps they are not recognizing, this is a big factor, many people aren't recognizing aerosol clouds for what they are. If they don't see a horizon-to-horizon trail, they think there's no spraying going on, even if their sky is filled with cobweb, hazy, aerosol canopy. They don't recognize it anymore. Most people don't recognize what a cloud is anymore, what a real cloud is, I should say. So, an aerosol cloud is still a cloud, but it's not a natural cloud at all. So, and we've also seen in certain areas where people reported snow that was behaving very suspiciously. I don't know, it's behaving in a way that indicates it's chemically nucleated. And the same people now reporting that the second round of snow or another round of snow they had behaved completely differently. Well, how can that be? Unless that first, or some of these rounds of snow are heavily chemically nucleated, which cause them to sublimate, which means to convert from a solid to a gas without going through a liquid phase, which is what we'd expect from artificially nucleated material. So it lends even more credence to the fact that we know they're artificially nucleating. We have patents going back to 1950 for this process. 1950, 64 years ago. So now, are we not to think that they're not incredibly advanced at this process now? And we have the Chinese openly admitting they did it for anybody who chooses to look, and yet we have how much of academia going on the record, their meteorologists saying, oh, this is all a hoax, it's conspiracy. It's blatant, glaring lies at this point, all up and down the ladder. So, Russ, have you seen any of the media, Russ, on the sort of denial on this artificial chemically nucleated snow? Have you seen some of the official media denial of this?
Yeah, I've seen some of it. It's pretty amazing, just like you say, Dane. They just lie. That's all they do.
It's not like it's spin. It's just blatant, glaring lie at this point. And too many people are buying this. And one thing, an article that we'll post next week, I spent some time on the phone this morning with people from the Cosmic Convergence Group. It's a group of very concerned people who have done a lot of good, and they're going to issue an article next week that I think will be very important for all of us to look at, that addresses the fact that society has been trained to accept as gospel anything from people who hold degrees, as if that somehow makes them oracles of truth, when the real truth is that is just a license to lie and have that lie believed. And I'm looking forward to posting their article. I'm going to post it front and center, because that's a key paradigm that needs to be shattered. I know we've been into this before, and Richard's shown a lot of light on this because he's kind of going through it right now. But the conditioning that the American public has had to believe the official narrative, because it comes from somebody with a little piece of paper that is apparently a license for them to be this oracle of truth, that paradigm needs to be shattered, absolutely shattered, because those are the people that have led us to the brink of extinction of all life on Earth. Those same people those same degreed people who are quote-unquote the experts, the ones that are looking after us, supposedly, are the ones that have herded us all off the cliff. And we are off the cliff. We're in free fall right now. We'll see how hard the landing's going to be. It's going to be damn hard. So at that point, though, people are at the point now where they're not going to have a choice to wake up. Food's going to be very expensive in the coming months, and life's going to start changing very rapidly from here. But Russ, I know we've been into this subject before again, but it's so important that your perspective, and then I'll get Richard's too again, on people's propensity to believe whatever they're told. If it's somebody on the TV with a particular credential, your take on people's propensity to believe whatever they're told in that case.
My take is that people have a really hard time believing, because I've dug into their minds to try to find out what it is that's going on in their minds that makes them so bent towards believing whatever comes out of that speaker. And they believe that when that information comes out over a large group of people or to a large population, they believe that that organization or that company that is spreading that information has some kind of accountability. And that is a false paradigm. There is no accountability.
I'll let you continue, but I want to highlight that word you just said because I think it's so important, that there's some sort of accountability for that group, that they're somehow responsible for what they say as having some sort of basis in truth. So continue on, because that's a good point you just made.
Exactly. The people just think that when this information is put out there, that there's going to be some kind of real strict accountability that's going to be that's going to make sure that they can't get away with lying. And actually, the opposite is true, because if your only real source of information, if the general public's only real source of information or so-called information is this same group of lies or companies that tell lies, there is no accountability. And with the money and the power they have behind them, there is no accountability whatsoever. And people need to realize this. The only accountability, we're starting to see accountability today in the form of alternative media, which is what everyone should be watching, because they are a much more reliable source of news than mainstream media. And the funny thing that's happening is mainstream media has been forced to tell closer to the truth on many occasions, on many of the stories that have come out where in the past they would have lied. They've been forced to tell stories that are closer to the truth because alternative media picked up the stories and was telling the public about them, so they can't get away with it so much anymore. So it's very interesting what we're seeing, the pressure we're seeing put on mainstream media, not to mention the fact that their approval ratings are at all-time lows. Are the numbers like in 30% or 30% of people believe? I mean, has really, really gone down in the past decade, and I'm really glad to see that.
It should be zero. And so I want to point out a scenario that in regard to the weather, the climate, we see all these quote-unquote experts giving us one reason after another, trying to explain away. It's like, let's use the guy crossing the crosswalk again, and the diesel truck runs him over. It's like the Weather Channel and some of these other agencies trying to explain that they saw a guy walking across a crosswalk, and suddenly he just flew into the air and broke every bone in his body and landed on the street. And it just happened, naturally. No mention of the truck that just ran him over, but that's about how ludicrous this is. It's like them trying to explain what happened to this guy walking across the crosswalk, that he just suddenly flew into the air or landed on the street and then got crushed, and there's no explanation of the truck, no recognition of the truck. And that's how ludicrous this is, when we have them trying to explain away the contorted jet stream, completely historically unprecedented, these chemically nucleated storms that happen again and again and again, the aerosolization of all the moisture over the West, the stationary high pressure over the West that's completely droughted us into a cataclysm, and no admission to the programs that are going on. And again, back to the guy in the crosswalk, it's like this, saying, well, yeah, there are diesel trucks, and they do go down the street, and they could hit somebody, and we might do this someday. We might drive these trucks in the street, and they could hurt people someday. But we're not doing it now. But this guy, he looked like he got hit by a truck, but he couldn't have got hit by the truck because the trucks don't exist yet. I mean, I don't know if I'm giving the right example here, but that's about how ridiculous it is. They talk about geoengineering, that yes, we could do it, should do it, may do it, and it's going to cause this and this and this, all of which we see happening already. We can see it with our own eyes in the sky, but yet there's no admission that it's going on, even though it couldn't be more obvious. So, Richard, in those examples I just gave, I mean, does that make any sense at all, that it's about that ridiculous, that comparing the guy being hit by a truck in the crosswalk and the truck not being acknowledged?
Yeah, in fact, you brought up so many great points, Dane. There's 3 or 4 things I'd like to say real quick without taking too much time. One of them is, relating to people's propensity to believe complete nonsense from perceived authority figures. I don't think that a lot of those authority figures necessarily have to lie. They just have to read their teleprompters and be willing to say anything, because they trust the authority of the people putting the information in, and they also are motivated not to question it because of how much money they make reading whatever's put in there. And so, when you're looking at the academic system teaches to lose your reasoning capability. I know, because I'm right in the middle of it. And what the new definition of science has become is not what it used to be. It used to be observation, pattern recognition, analysis, and deciding how to use those things for some benefit. Now, science is redefined, just like so many other things in society, as repeating or paraphrasing accepted authority. That's new science. And that's the only thing that's acceptable in higher education, and it's really working well. It's working in medicine, all these different areas. These people are not necessarily consciously lying. They're just completely successful at the brain transplant that the system has done on them. And I would say that with that as an example, the psychological weapons that are employed and strategically used all over the world by the powers that are really in control are far stronger than nuclear weapons, chemical weapons, biological weapons, or any of those things, because without the psychological weapons, they wouldn't be allowed to freely use the others. And the programs that they roll out with those are so incredibly successful on many levels. And I want to tie this into the first thing you said about the alternative media. The biggest one out there, and I think there's nothing wrong with saying this, is the one that I know the most about is Alex Jones, and I have spent time talking to him. I know him a little bit as a person. I have great respect for him, and I think that the reason that he is completely going along this path of believing global cooling is not because he works for the power structure. I'm pretty much absolutely sure that's not true at all. But the reason that he's saying it comes, again, under this heading of psychology. He knows, and he's done more studying on history and political and economic things than anybody I know, and he knows that the original exposure of global warming as a theory of what was happening, which I happen to believe is happening, was propagated by global criminals. And he's right. It was. But it also happens to be true. They were just publicizing it for their own agendas, which are far more than anything about Al Gore. They're about Agenda 21, which is a vast issue. And so as long as people like Alex are just completely focused on trying to get rid of anything connected to Agenda 21, they now psychologically absolutely connect the global warming idea with Agenda 21 lies, and they just, so far they can't see through it. But as you mentioned, this will be a short-lived debate anyway, which we're soon not going to have to worry about because the warmth is going to be undeniable, and the fact that the methane is melting just brings it absolutely beyond question. So, I don't think we're going to have that problem very long. As far as where I am right now, it's like a gas chamber here. They're spraying so much that, this is the last thing and then I'll shut up for a minute, the weather forecasting authorities, which are centralized just like the fake news authorities, and they put into the feeds and the teleprompters and all that whether they want reported, has nothing to do with it has to do with the truth, actually, but in a different way. Even AOL, which I guess is connected to Time Warner, it's a pretty big company, and they have their own daily weather forecasts for everywhere in the world that goes out every day and is constantly updated. It's a great service as long as you don't need it to be true. And what they're saying, for example, today and all week for northern Arizona, which is having crystal clear skies plus massive spraying that makes them look cloudy, is that the forecast is for cloudy weather every day to some degree, only to cover for the chemtrails. It's amazing.
It is. In those terms, we see Northern California, if they say mostly sunny, that means spray. So how does that meteorologist know that that's going to happen? Because they're simply parrots. They repeat what they're told. They don't deserve any credential or any recognition for that credential. I mean, they're simply parrots.
They're not conscious liars. They're paid actors, and they don't care about anything except being paid for their part.
It is, and in the case of Alex Jones, I believe you, and I look forward to the day when that paradigm of the scenario we face breaks down a bit, because we definitely need Alex in this equation.
Yeah,
but that ideology needs to break down, not just with Alex, but with a whole bunch of other people that are currently. If you look at the whole scenario, the whole Al Gore thing, and the whole setup, where they were allowed that message to get out. They had an agenda for it, exactly as you described, and then very, very cleverly use that to so condition people that they would then ignore glaring facts, because they were so upset about people like Al Gore and his hypocrisy that they've just made a sort of mental block in their minds that anything that came from that notion of global warming had to be false, because it initially came from these people who they recognized as criminals. And so now that's being used to blind them toward the fact that the true scenario we face is, in fact, what those criminals have said, only to a much worse degree. But people have been blinded to that because they've been tainted by, these various things that have happened and the agenda that was being carried out at that point. So that now, though the only goal right now is to hide the severity of the total planetary meltdown, and I stand by that. I absolutely stand by it. It's not a opinion. It's what the facts say. It's what all the data says. Period. So let me give a couple stats to that, so that people understand this is what I stand on. Not looking out my window and saying, "Gee, there's snowflakes falling," and the media says it's a record cold here and there. A few places where they're focusing chemically nucleated material. We just passed the 37th consecutive year of above normal temperatures on planet Earth. 37 years in a row. 346 months in a row. I encourage people to examine, look up what I'm saying, because there is no dispute to this. So, again, the totally engineered nature of these snowstorms, and if you really want to see what's happened to the planet over the last 100 plus years, since 1880, go to the front cover of the front page of GeoEngineeringWatch.org, scroll down in the middle. You'll see a big colored map, NASA GISS maps with the global temperature records put on a short animation since 1880. And what you'll see is this. You'll see the planet was warming up till about the late 40s, when we believe these programs really started to get going. And there's a very anomalous 20-25 year cool down that we would expect with the initial aerosolization of the atmosphere, because it does have a temporary cooling effect. But then the negative feedbacks kick in, and it starts to warm again, and that's exactly what we see from 1970 on. It's warmer, warmer, warmer. Look at this animation. It's year for year. Take a look and see that's the real picture of what's happening. So anyway, I encourage people, don't take a headline, don't take a media hype, look at facts, and not just out your window at some geoengineered snowflakes falling. That's it. Russ, again, I know you've been in the area where you guys have been hit hard again and again and again, right?
Oh yeah, we're hit hard. I've traveled up and down the East Coast. I'm one of the lucky few sensitive people who smell and taste the metals in the air. I've smelled and tasted the air all my life, and there's nothing compares to what happens when these lines appear in the sky. After an hour, after a little while, this horrible, horrible taste and smell fills the air. And I've been in touch with a lot of people who've contacted me who have the same symptoms and who taste the metallic and chemical smells and tastes in the air. And
the cold, you've had the cold there too, though, right? You've had plenty of cold in recent.
It has been bitter cold. We've had a series of storms come through here. In fact, we've got another one coming through very shortly. 18 inches of snow, 35-mile-an-hour gusts.
Now watch for this. When it comes through us, if you can watch for this, they're predicting thunder snow again. Okay, you go back a decade plus, or let's go back even further, 2 or 3 decades. You didn't have thunder snow. That does not mix with the sort of conditions you would have in a quote-unquote winter storm. Now it's normal. Thunder snow. How is that possible? Because it's not natural. And so you have this moisture pumping up the eastern seaboard right off the Atlantic, and it magically turns to snow as soon as it gets over land. How is this possible? And why would the temperatures rebound so quickly? If there was anything natural to this, why would the temperatures bounce back so quickly? We see it happening again and again and again. So, for here in the West, we can't really remember what it's like to have quote-unquote winter because we have none. We have none. And there was record temperatures even yesterday in parts of the West, 25 degrees above normal, 30. You don't see that in the media. Did you guys hear anything about that in the media? Record temperatures yesterday in parts of the West?
No, I don't
Probably
think
not.
I saw anything like that. I also, about what you said about the southern storms with the nucleated snow that kept changing recipes, I think that there was one video that I saw in particular, I'm sure it was viral on YouTube, where the girl was holding a stove lighter under a piece of snow, and not only was it not melting, it was smelling sickening plastic smell. And I think that was incredibly important. I saw it debunked by a so-called scientist later with a degree and experience and all this. Smelling plastic when you're burning snow is a really bad sign. And I just think that the gravity of that was amazing.
They don't care what they put in the mix now because they know civilization will collapse. There's no question about that. And again, if we're to have anything to salvage after that collapse, the current paradigm has to collapse. It can't not collapse. So at this point, those in power absolutely do not care what they contaminate. I think we can see this from the fracking and everything else we have going on around the planet. But so God only knows what's in that mix. Now I saw, and I have literally a couple thousand square miles of trailless wilderness behind me, and I venture there when I can break away. A stream in a completely trailless wilderness area with, after one of these nucleated snows, there was a blue silt in one of the ponds there. Blue. Now, I've been in the wilderness my whole life. I've never seen blue silt on a little backwater eddy. Whatever the hell that was, it wasn't natural. So again, God only knows what they're using in this mix to try to cool things down. And here's what we see. We've had the East locked in this conveyor belt of these cold storms, right? I just mentioned it's going to switch. Now they're going to cool the West off a little bit. They're pumping the moisture straight in, zonal flow, which is a straight in flow from the jet stream, pumping all the moisture they can in, aerosolizing the hell out of it because they don't want it to fall in the West. It's part of how they cool it down is they aerosolize this. They nucleate even in the clouds. That creates a cold layer of air at the surface. This area, I've been in the woods and felt this come down where it's like, again, someone opening a refrigerator as they're spraying the hell out of these clouds with this nucleation material. You get this cold, dense layer of air come down, but so now they're going to cool the West down, and in spite of all this moisture flowing in, nothing's really falling in California anymore. So the East is going to heat up, and then that will switch again. It'll switch back to the West. Maybe 5 to 6 days, we're going to have a very warm East Coast and a cooler West Coast, and that's going to flip again within the next 10 to 12 days. The West Coast will be frying again, and the East will be cool again because they can't cool the whole country. The oceans are too warm. They're simply too warm. And as I've stated before, and this is important for people to remember, a cubic meter of seawater holds 4,000 times the thermal energy of a cubic meter of air. So all their chemical toxic experimentation in the atmosphere can't change the tide that's coming at us right now. It can't change it. It can only kill everything in the process. That's what's happening. Russ, can you give the call number, Russ? And if anybody calls in, if you can give us a question that we can answer more quickly, and that way we'll try to get to, make sure we have room for anybody else and we can keep our dialogue going.
Absolutely. 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. That's a call-in number. Call in and ask us the question. Dane, I remember what real clouds look like. I've been watching the sky since I was a kid. The sky's always the part I was looking at. 3 types of clouds. 3 types of easy to define clouds. Today, we have all of these stringy, strange structures that I've never seen before. And because I've done 3 years of solid time lapse from 2010 or 2009 to 2011, I have seen that all of this stuff is coming out of jets. It's clear to me. I just wish more people looked at the sky. 3 types of clouds plus nimbus, which is a modifier, which means precipitory. You know?
Yeah. And now, again, on the nucleation end, there's a host of experimentation, and I'll have more data out on some soon, and some have seen articles on this already. But whatever type of genetically modified bacterial nucleation is also probably a part of the mix, in addition to chemical nucleators, polarized metal nucleators in the case of a positively charged barium particle. There's many ways to artificially nucleate, and they're probably all going on. So that's going to change the characteristics in any given place at any given time. But the bottom line means is that they don't care at this point what they do. They don't care what sort of toxic effect it has. They don't care. They know certain things are coming now. They're inevitable. So instead of trying to apply the brakes, though, the power structure is applying the accelerator. And I heard, I'm not sure who gave this example. It might have been Mikhail Kaku, a theoretical physicist, but he compared the human race to a car that's speeding toward a cliff, and all the occupants can do, i.e. the human race, is argue about what seat they get. And that's about what we have. And the amount of people that are engaged in this fight needs to change. It needs to go up. And there's a lot of great activists out there now. I'm hearing from them that I joined Facebook. I started being active at Facebook about 2 months ago. And a lot of people have surfaced there. I'm grateful I did this. It's a lot of work, but I'm glad I'm connecting with the people I'm connecting with, because they are helping tremendously. They're starting spot fires. And that's what everybody can and must do. Start spot fires, effective spot fires, credible data, just like, whatever state you're in, like I just did at the Capitol last week with my kids carrying DVDs and flyers, because I went to so many offices and tried to unload so much data. But you pick the right day, and you don't go into a big rant with those office staff. You just simply say, we're trying to get the word out because mainstream media is not covering this. These programs are radically affecting us all. We're just trying to sound the alarm. Something very simple like that. You pass the data on, and you walk away. Copies of the Look Up film, perhaps, George Barnes' film, or the flyers from GeoEngineering Watch can work good. You can download them for free and have them printed wherever you're at. But that kind of spot fire starting so that people know this is going on, because there's some really credible people. Like, I want to make an example out of Jill Buck, really intelligent gal, did not know about climate engineering until about 2 months ago. And I'm so impressed with how she's seen this issue for what it was, no blinders, dove in. Jill Buck is a radio announcer for Go Green Radio, former military, incredibly intelligent gal, and she flew to LAX to mediate for the panel discussion we had there. Incredibly good mediator, communicator, and people like Jill who didn't know. We need more people like Jill. We need as many as we can get. So, again, if we all focus our efforts on just raising the awareness effectively, then I think we're much closer to critical mass than we know. I really do. That's my hope. And Richard, again, people who, you said you went out and did a little bit of activism work. Are you bumping into people who never heard of this issue? Lost Richard. He might be in mood. Russ?
Yeah, Richard, you there? It shows he's connected, but I'm not sure what's up.
Okay. Russ, you should bump into people who never heard of this issue, correct?
Bump into people all the time who've never heard of this. Most of the general public has never heard of this. And you know what the beauty of this is, Dane? Is if people would do what you tell them to do, there's a certain percentage of the public that will latch onto this immediately. They will look up in the sky and say, oh my gosh, I've never noticed this. That is weird. I've never seen that before.
There is. In fact, I was in town about a week ago, old guy out in the parking lot kind of packing into groceries into his car, and I gave him a flyer, and mentioned that these programs are going on, just what I just outlined, went into the store, came back out. He was still there looking at the sky. He was a former Air Force guy, and he stood there for 20 minutes while I was in the store. He'd never heard of this issue, and he looked up, immediately saw it, immediately the light went on, and he didn't even leave because he wanted to talk again when I came back out because he was so shocked. That's who we need to reach, not to beat our heads against the wall with certain people with certain ideologies that they will not see the truth, no matter how glaring it is. They just are not ready. They're not ready to wake up. But we need to all work together to reach those that are ready to wake up, and there's a great deal of them out there.
That's right. If people, Dane, the thing is that I would encourage people to do what you just said. Don't waste your time with people who are doubting or trying to debunk. Don't waste your time with them, because if we just reach the people who are willing to listen, there are enough people in the public that will latch onto this immediately, but we've got to reach them. People have got to get out. Plus, we've got a console full of calls whenever you're ready, Dane.
Okay, let me make one comment, then we'll take that. On what you just said about the quote-unquote debunkers. So many people I get trying to reach me with how do I respond to this, how do I respond to that, with the typical quote-unquote debunking questions, which are simply an attempt to tangle people up in a big circular conversation with people who don't want to know the truth. As you just said, Russ, correctly so, don't waste your time. Move on. Certainly don't post their sites and try to cite them in a way because that's what they want. They want attention, and we need to not give them that attention. So bottom line is try to spend your time with those who are willing to wake up. So go ahead with the call, Russ.
All right, we've got a panel full of callers here. Caller with your phone number ending in 35, plus other callers, just try to keep your noise down, please, when you're calling in, just so we don't hear any noise bleeding over. Try to keep your microphone muted if you do have a mute function. Caller with your number that ends in 35, you're on. How are you doing today?
Hey, good afternoon, gentlemen. I'd like to thank you for your efforts in bringing this to the forefront, but I'd like to also bring up something that I find to be fairly important. You're pushing an association with Alex Jones, and I'm going to tell you straight up, that is not the way to get the message out to people. And if you just look at his previous antics on any other issue where he gets into the public eye, he is not the person you want to at all push your agenda. Absolutely not. I cannot stress that the man is radio cancer. He is enough to destroy whatever you wish to promote. Do not associate with him.
I'm not pushing anything with Alex Jones at all. I'm simply not trying to start.
I would not even use him. Do not even use him for promotion. Do not try to take his audience.
He has nothing to do with my issue.
The man is horrible. It's bad news, and he's going to derail what you say. He's going to take away from your credibility. And your message is important. Your message is very important for anybody that looks up. But if you associate with this man, he is going to take away all your thunder, and it's going to become the Alex Jones Show. And if you doubt my words, just take a look back to when he was on the Piers Morgan Show for gun control, and look at his clown antics then.
Now, what's your name, caller? Who am I speaking
to? My name is Michael. And I truly appreciate what you're doing, and I don't mean this as any sort of doom and gloom or anything. I just want the message out, and I want the message out in the best way, and associating with that man is not the best way.
Michael, I appreciate your call, and I
thank you, sir.
Respond to that. Let me tell you where I stand with this. I will never ever allow what I feel is to be the truth ever to be hijacked by anybody. Period. And I have expressed, and in siding with you, my I'm perplexed and bewildered at Alex Jones's lack of recognition of the engineered nature of these cold events. I'm very perplexed at that, and I saw the rant you mentioned on CNN, and that certainly was not helpful either. So, at this point, I'm not trying to ally with anybody. Know that. I won't. I mean, my message is my message, period. That will never, ever change. So, I hope that at some point those in Alex Jones camps and Mike Adams and so forth, I hope that they will acknowledge glaring truths for what they are and not help to sell geoengineering, because I feel that's what's happening right now. Whatever the cause of that the messages they are putting out are helping the geoengineers to sell geoengineering by trying to paint these storms as somehow natural and somehow global cooling. That's exactly what the power structure wants the public to believe right now. Exactly. As Richard said earlier, they once had an agenda of making people know there was warming because they wanted to carry out certain things. That has clearly changed. The situation is so severe now that they only want to make the American population believe that the planet is cooling, which helps the geoengineers sell geoengineering. And at this point right now, Alex Jones is helping them to do that. They're helping the power structure do what they're doing. So I'll leave it at that. I don't want to draw any more lines in the sand than I have. But know this, Mike, that I will hold to what I believe the data dictates is solid truth. Period. So rest assured on that.
Richard, any response to that? Did you hear it?
Yeah, I heard part of it. I'm back now. Skype was wiped out for a little while there. I would pretty much agree with what Dane said, is that whatever's true has to be the priority no matter who agrees or disagrees. And I think this is the only way to actually find out what is true, is don't get hung up on labels, groups, affiliations, because as soon as you do that, you can't afford to just see what's actually happening. And I don't, whatever anybody says, I think our responsibility is to see what's true. And one other little point I'd like to make with regard to the public, running itself off a cliff and in so many ways right now. I do think that's because of the public being so brainwashed and unconscious, but I would put a huge responsibility for that fact on the complex of government with corporations, big corporations, that have engineered exactly the mentality that we see the public having now. It is, in a way, the responsibility of the public to break out of that. But since they're not really clear enough to do that, I really see that this is the result of the psychological program that has created this mentality.
It is. And again, as far as my position goes on this, any notion that the planet is cooling is patently false. If data and facts matter, that conclusion is patently false. Anybody who says that's happening is wrong, period. So if we're to rely on data and facts for our conclusions, so that's the bottom line, period. Russ, is there another caller online?
Yep, there are callers. Caller, hold on just for a moment. We got a question from the chat room. Mark is asking what went on in Los Angeles. Can you share anything about that?
Yes, we had there was a panel discussion, I think a couple hundred people present, good articulate people. There was one troll in the group, and we cut the legs out from underneath him quickly. This video should be posted fairly soon. George Barnes told me yesterday that they have it now, and we will post it. And it was simply an attempt to educate the people at the expo, to address certain issues. George's film won another award, and that was presented. I accepted that award on Saturday at the LAX Hilton for George. He had other things to attend to, so he flew out early Saturday morning. John Savage, the actor, many might know who he is. He's a fairly well-known actor, and he presented the awards, clearly sympathetic to the cause. When I went up to the podium to accept the award, he gave me a big and very sincere hug, and when I exited the podium, he made a few more comments about geoengineering that clearly indicated he's sympathetic to the cause, and I think, as were all the people in the room who are other filmmakers. So I think word is truly getting out to a larger degree than we realize. So anyway, thanks for asking, Mark, and I think the expo helped our cause.
Great. Caller with the phone number that ends in 23, you're on. How are you doing today?
Hey, it's Helen again. I just wanted to throw this 2 cents in for anybody that's a non-believer that the planet is warming. All they need to do is flip on the Olympics, the Winter Olympics. I happened to turn the channel and catch one of the announcers saying in all the years that he's covered the event, I think it was a cross-country ski event, that he's never covered one where the temperature was 54 degrees. You can just look and see there's almost no snow in the mountains, and the only snow that is there is the manicured snow that the competitors are working on. So I thought that's, if anybody's doubting, just bring that point up, and that's all I had to say.
You know, Helen, you bring up a great point. If anybody remembers the Canadian Winter Olympics, it was 8 or 12 years ago, there was no snow. I mean, they were trucking snow in. And so we see that this has been building for a long time, so the geoengineers just pulled out all the stops with their jet stream manipulation and chemically nucleated snow, and they've been able to bamboozle a few people. But your point is very valid, and I've watched that also and seen. You look off the course, as Helen said, manicured snow on the course. You look off the course, and there's brown patches everywhere. I mean, there's not much up there. So,
yep.
Good point, Helen. Good point.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Dana, I think it's also important to point out that as long as the maps are reliable, showing the release of suboceanic methane, there really isn't much of a debate at that point.
Nope, no debate. And again, there's no, once the ocean's warm, I mean, there's no stopping that. And it's the amount of inertia behind that. Again, it's a 4,000 to 1 equation. 4,000 times the thermal energy contained in that seawater than there is in the air. Once that wave is built, there's no stopping it. All geoengineering is doing is fueling that fire, and that's why I try to hammer this point home with people. If the government ever tries to sell geoengineering as a cure, and I don't think they will at this point, the public sentiment is so negative to anything being done with the natural systems of the planet that they've already tried to test the water. They tried to test it with David Keith in 2010 at the international conference. We mentioned this before, but immediately after that conference where David Keith put his leg down his mouth, they canceled any other allowance for journalists to attend. The next conference is even in Asilomar, which was a month later, which we were going to attend. They banned us from that. So I think that they've gone a completely different direction. Now they're only trying to bamboozle the public into thinking that there's some sort of natural cooling going on. And if people look at these GIS maps, GISS, this is the NASA maps, on the front page of Geoengineering Watch, you can see where there's a cool area, North American continent, a couple spots in Antarctica, and now recently Russian government's probably hammering Siberia because there's a cool spot there. But the rest of the planet is basically in colors of dark red because it's so far above normal temperatures. So you can see where they're geoengineering, period, by looking at these maps. You can see.
Yeah. Also, Dane, in conjunction to what you were saying, as far as justifying the use in the future of geoengineering or the present or whatever, I think when you're a person that thinks about these things and analyzes them, we might forget that 99+% of the public doesn't even know what a geoengineering is. And in a place like I am right now in northern Arizona, the government doesn't have to sell geoengineering based on anything because they just flood it all over the place and don't mention it, and it works fine. So,
That's right.
As long as the public does not become conscious, which the television and the school system and all these things are really trying to make sure never happens, then they don't really even need to sell geoengineering. They just need to do it. And we need to figure out some countermeasure to that.
Yeah, well, I mean, at this point, awareness is growing rapidly, Richard, and as I've argued many times before, if we can reach critical mass of awareness, I think the dominoes will begin to fall. And that's a dangerous scenario, too, because as I painted in my power structure that I did, or my PowerPoint presentation I did recently, that once this curtain is pulled back, and everybody knows they've been a part of this grand and lethal experiment, I don't know what the power structure is going to do, but certainly they're preparing for that. Thus the 2.2 billion rounds of ammunition and all they're digging in their bunkers. God only knows what sort of bomb they're going to drop on us at that point, false flag, whatever, and that's coming. But there's simply no alternative but to expose these programs while there's still anything left of Earth's life support systems to salvage. Because
absolutely right. And that under any conditions of impending climate catastrophe or whatever, there is no acceptable justification for dropping these materials on the public.
No matter what. So anyway, Russ, is there anybody left that we can reach?
Well, I'd like to, if anybody wants to call in right now, we lost a couple callers that just disappeared for some reason, but call 718-717-8296. We still have a couple minutes left. But Dane, one thing I wanted to mention is that, there's a small army of people out looks like we're back on the radio. I've lost both Dane and Richard. I'm sorry, folks. I don't know what's going on, but we're having quite some connectivity issues today. let me try to get them back. In the meantime, I'll mention while I'm trying to get. There we are. Looks like we're back connected again. Sorry, everyone. We just had everything just dropped dead for some reason here, but looks like we're back connected now.
Probably no surprise if things go on. Go ahead, Russ, with what you're saying.
What I was just saying is that I want to ask people, I want to make this. Okay, we're back on again. The stream is up again. Sorry, folks, about that. We're just having all kinds of technical issues here. But the one thing I wanted to say is I want to suggest to people to make it personal. Do you know people wake up every 2 hours? Because and out, it's oscillating in and out, our connection with the station. But yeah. Okay, looks like we're connected again. We do have a few minutes left. I just wanted to, as long as we have this connection, I'll try to fit this in. That make it personal to people. Do people wake up every 2 hours?
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing.
All right, let's see. Okay, looks like we're on again. I will try it again. Making it personal for people. Do people wake up every 2 hours in the night? Do you have ringing in the ears? I, personally, as someone who can smell and taste the plumes that are in the air, the ringing in the ears is always associated with the intensity of the metallic taste and smell that's in the air for me and the small army of people that have contacted me who tell me the same thing. Same thing with waking up in the night. If I wake up, it's very common to have a plume come on real strong every 2 hours. And if you knew the number of people contact me, say, I wake up every 2 hours in the night. I wake up, don't know what it is. Well, these people can't smell and taste the plumes in the air, so they don't know that it's that's waking them up, because it can make your heart beat. It can restrict your breathing, cause inflammation.
RF frequency could be a part of that too, Russ. I mean, you have, and the two go together. I mean, as they're aerosolizing, we would expect RF frequency, but that RF frequency, which is, the ionosphere heaters, could certainly be a component of that waking up and so forth as well, both together.
Right. But the thing that I do notice is that, when they spray certain types, for instance, that I call the swamp water type, everybody gets sick. So I know when there's going to be a flu outbreak, because if they spray this thing 3 days in a row, everybody gets flu symptoms. The pattern for people waking up in the night, it's very common that a plume will descend every 2 hours, and I've had a large number of people contact me now and say, I wake up every 2 hours, like clockwork. Well, hey, this is GeoEngineering Watch Radio on behalf of Dane Wigington and Richard Sachs. This is Russ Tanner. We're here every Saturday at 3 p.m.